everybody, good morning. This is my part one of the Women's Prize Fiction Longlist Reading Vlog. I was going to combine everything into one, but you'll see as the video or as the vlog progresses why I'm going to be splitting this up. So I talk about, ultimately about 7 books are covered in this video. There's some good, there's some bad, there's definitely some DNFs, possibly more than one, but ultimately this is about 2 weeks worth of some footage. So I hope you enjoy. I'm going to send it back to past hope, and yeah, let's get into this Women's Prize for Fiction long list reading vlog. First update in this Women's Prize long list reading vlog is I am 79% of the way through The Blue Beautiful World by Karen Lord, and I'm gonna DNF it. I know I'm so close, but I have been pushing myself for the last 100 pages to try to finish this book because it's the first one that I've picked up and I really want to at least complete it, and I could not possibly care less about what is happening in this book. It's a climate change sci-fi book, but it's so indescriptive that I have no idea what is going on. I am at a loss for words. There are so many words being thrown around and things happening and so many different characters, and I absolutely do not understand for one moment what the heck is happening. And I keep on reading hoping that it's going to be clarified, and it's not. And I am actually normally a fan of shorter science fiction or shorter fantasy books because I don't always, while I like the genre, I don't always want a ton of world building, but in this case, there's not enough world building. I am so confused. I'll be really interested to see what other people have to say about this book because hopefully they're having a good time with it, but it is absolutely not a book for me, which means unfortunately, one book on the list is going in the DNF pile. So 2 have done because I have already read Western Lean by Chet Maru. I've talked about this book previously in or prize or a wrap-up or something. I don't remember a whole lot about it. As I've said previously in other videos related to the Women's Prize, it wasn't my favorite. I didn't absolutely love it, but I know that a lot of people did. For this book, for The Blue Beautiful World, I'm very curious to see what kind of reaction comes out of it because I am not having a good time. It started off really interestingly with like this pop star who essentially is an alien, and it started off kind of cool, but even then I was still kind of confused, and I thought, well, it's the beginning, hopefully things will clarify. No, they didn't, and I'm not going to push myself because there are 14 more books on this list that at some point I would like to get to. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them because, as I've said also before, I just don't have access to all of them, but I'm going to get to as many as I can. So I'm going to call it quits on this one, and I will update you guys when I have more in my possession. I don't have any more of the Women's Prize lit books here with me right now, but I do have some coming in the library soon. Fingers crossed, the list can only go up from here. It's a couple days later, and I have 6 of the books from the Women's Prize long list in my possession. The library, these are the ones I was able to get most quickly from the library. Let's just go through them really quick and then we'll decide which one I'm reading next. So, The Red by Anne Enright, Hangman by Maya Binyam, Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshanathan. I have to say the other cover is so much prettier. I don't like this cover at all. This is not something I would ever just see on a shelf and gravitate towards. And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott, Night Bloom by Peace Adzo Mehdi, and Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. So what I think I'm going to do actually is start with the smaller books, which are these 2, just to hopefully find a win because I DNF'd one book and wasn't a big fan of the other book that I read off of this list. So I'm going to start with the small ones, see what happens. I am pretty excited about it. I was going to try a chapter, but ultimately I will be reading more than 1 chapter of each of these books, so we're not going to do that. I put into the library request for purchase on 4 books, which you will have seen in my like reaction video, and the requests for purchases were for Restless Dolly Maunder, In Defense of the Act, The Maidens, and Trace of Sun, I think, and they were all declined. So I will not be reading those books. I don't have access to them, and I also will not be reading Soldier Sailor. I don't have access to that one either. But, which is unfortunate, because a couple of those books were ones that I'm most interested in. But for now, let's start with Hangman. We'll see how it goes, and I will check in with you when I have something to say about this book. I have made it to page 44. First impressions. Okay, first of all, this book follows a man. He's nameless. So far, nobody in this book has a name. I don't imagine anybody will get a name. And he has been brought back to a country. It doesn't say exactly what country, but it says Sub-Saharan Africa after being away for 26 years. And he's going through the process of getting to know this country again, being reintroduced to family, and all that jazz. It's a very, so far, melancholy book. It is stream of consciousness. There is no dialogue. It's just this guy in his head, and you're getting descriptions about what he's doing and how he's feeling. It is, as I've said several times on this channel before, not my favorite type of writing. I do not like stream of consciousness stories. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with this one. Fortunately, it's quite short. It is 195 pages or so. I should be able to get through it pretty quickly. The goal is to finish it. I don't want to have to DNF another one, but I can already tell this isn't going to be my favorite. I think the character, I think his thought process so far has been kind of intriguing in what he's thinking about being reintroduced to these people into this country again, and how he's not really exactly sure what to think. He's feeling a little like at arm's length. He doesn't understand all of the language that's going around him, and he's kind of wondering if like customs have changed since he's been, like, is this supposed to happen this way, or is it just weird for him himself? So I find that interesting. I also find it interesting that the main character is male, and for the Women's Prize, I don't know that that's unusual or anything, but you are not getting a female perspective as of yet anyways in this book. So we will see how it continues to play out. Right now, I imagine I should be able to finish it. I don't think I'm going to get to the point where I don't want to read it anymore, but I already, like I said, it's not going to be my favorite on the list, but I'm hoping that it's at least enjoyable enough for me to get through. And I have finished Hangman by Maya Binyam. It was a really quick read, very easy, super, it just flows because of the writing style, because it is stream of consciousness, so you're just kind of in the story and you go. So you're following this guy, no characters are ever given names, and he arrives in his home country, and again, it's never really told what the country is. And everywhere he goes, he kind of meets somebody and he has a conversation, or he overhears a conversation, and he's kind of collecting these little stories as the book progresses. And it's very melancholy and slow, and it actually it got slow in the middle, and then kind of the last couple of chapters pick up a little because you realize how it's going to wrap up, and it wraps up in honestly kind of an interesting way, but overall not my favorite. Like I said, it doesn't help that it's not written in a way that I typically love. I can see why people would like it, but it's for a very specific type of reader. I feel like I am not my favorite, but it was easy enough to read and fast enough to read that I think a lot of people will get through it. I don't know that you'll get a lot of DNFs on this one just because of the length, but it couldn't have been any longer. It was just so slow. I've said that word a lot, but that's how I feel about it. Anyway, so that is done, and now I move on to The Red and the Ren by Anne Enright. I'm gonna make myself a coffee and keep reading. Ooh, ooh, look at that, big font. Okay, and how many pages is this one? 278. Oh, okay, let's see how long it takes to get through this one. Okay. Sad news in the reading front. I'm not going to finish The Ren by Anne Enright. I'm only about 30 pages in or so, but there's something about the voice of the narrator and the way it's written that I'm not enjoying at all. I do have it for a couple more weeks because it's a library book, so I will keep it and see if maybe I pick it up later, but for right now, I'm not at all interested in the story. And even when I read the synopsis, because I finally read it through kind of for the first time, it's just not a book that interests me. So I'm gonna move on because there are so many of them, and I'm gonna do And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott, which is, see, the problem is that it's a razor-sharp look at motherhood and mental health. Motherhood just is not a topic that typically interests me, and this has a lot to do with mother-daughter relationships, which is fine, but I don't know, there's something about it, like I said, that wasn't working. So we're gonna give this one a go and we'll see. But so far, I don't know, I'm a little underwhelmed with the books that I've been reading. I know that I've only finished one, and I DNF'd one, and I didn't love the other. I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit right now, but let's give this one a go and see if it will turn the ship around. Let's do a bit of an update, shall we? I have finished And Then She Fell by Alicia Elliott. I enjoyed this book for the most part. There were portions of it that I think were done really, really well, and then other parts that weren't exactly my favorite. But you're following this woman, Alice, who has just had a baby, and she's going through just a lot of postpartum. They don't really diagnose it as postpartum depression, but that kind of seems like what it is. And she starts to see things and hear things and respond to things. She gets a little paranoid, and you're not sure if what is happening or if she is creating these circumstances in her head. It has a lot of hints of Bad Cree by Jessica Johns and The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I'm not sure, I don't remember the author, but I'll put a picture of both those books here. There are a lot of the imagery and the storytelling of those two books is very prevalent in this book. And I think that part of the story was done really well. There are a couple of scenes that get a little kind of body horror-like, which make me uncomfortable because that's just not my favorite thing. I have, I would call a pretty queasy stomach, and so some things that get really descriptive just make me feel gross. And so there are definitely a couple of things like that. It's not a horror book, but it has kind of those elements of getting really graphic about certain things. I do think that the resolution of this was really interesting. This has a huge discussion about trauma, generational trauma, but particularly with the way Indigenous and Native, and in this case she's Mohawk, the treatment of those populations by the Canadian government is so apparent, and how the things that even today, just with like accessibility to fresh water and treatment of police and stereotypes, like it is such a forefront of the conversation. And I think that that's done very well, but it dragged a little at the end. So I have really mixed feelings about this book. I think it's great. Obviously the Canadian content, super relevant to today. Love good Canadian content. And I think the book as a whole is really well, but there were parts of it that I didn't love. However, as a book that has so much of a focus on motherhood, and the fact that I was able to stay so engaged with it for as much as I was, that is an absolute win for me. And I'm very happy because this list hasn't been going the greatest. However, I have started the book 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Marinee Lee, I think. And I mean, I'm like 25 pages in, but it's got some really great potential. I am very, very much looking forward to reading that book. It is an ebook, so unfortunately I don't have a physical copy, but I'm glad that I'm able to physically read it. I don't like fiction in audio form, so I'm glad that I was able to at least get a physical, like a Word copy of the book. So that is where we're at. I would say so far, this is my winner, but there's a lot of room for something to surpass this. But either way, definitely enjoyed this. I think Alicia's writing is brilliant, and I think that her voice as a Mohawk writer, Canadian Mohawk writer, is really important, and I'm super, super thrilled to have been able to pick that one up. So there we have it. That is the update. It is Friday today. I am going to keep reading my book and see where the day takes us. Maybe I'll get some B-roll or something. It is a beautiful day. It's supposed to be a really nice weekend, so we might get some action of being outside or something. I am about 40% of the way through 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster, and I am loving it. So you're following this woman, Ms. Mook, and the premise of the story is there is a person who writes obituaries for people, but they're before they've passed away, so it's really about the person deciding how they want their lives to be presented after they've passed. And she starts by asking for 3 words to describe who you are through your life. And with Ms. Mook, they get talking, and Ms. Mook says 3 isn't enough. And they come to this kind of compromise where she'll give them 8 words, the 8 lives. And it goes from there. So you're following her as she lives in Korea, but it's being occupied by the Japanese. And so there's a lot of that going on, and it's pretty traumatic what she has to go through to survive, and all the different phases of her life and all the different people she kind of has to become to survive. It's a very well written book. It is flowing together, so you're not getting every moment of her life, you're getting kind of the big things that happen in her life, but as you move to the next phase, things start to fall into place where maybe spaces were between the 2 stories, between all the stories. I don't know if I'm describing it very well. Either way, it's really interesting. It is similar to And Then She Fell, in that you're really dealing with a lot of post-traumatic stuff. The trauma that happens in this case directly to her and how she has to come out of it, and the generational trauma as well that kind of puts her in certain circumstances. It is so good. I'm so thrilled to be reading it, and it's the first book that I think really not deserves to be on the Women's Prize, but I think deserves the recognition that comes with being in the Women's Prize, because I don't know how many people would have picked this book up without it, and I think a lot of people should read it. It's absolutely brilliant. It reminds me kind of a little bit of, I'll put the picture here. There's some undertones that are similar to this one, and it's just wonderfully done. I'm very, very happy to be reading it, and I hope to finish it today. Well, it has been a couple of days, so let's update where I'm at in this Women's Prize for Fiction reading. Coffee, obviously. I finished 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster. I don't have much more to add to what I said in the previous clip about this book. I enjoyed it, and I stick by the fact that I think it's a really good book to have put on the Women's Prize just for the recognition it's going to get. I do think that the end, there were a couple of new points of view introduced that for me, I didn't necessarily love, but I understand why they were there. Either way, I thought it was a really solid book and I enjoyed it. I don't know that I loved it as much as I did from the previous clip. I do think the ending was really good, but like I said, the changing kind of the points of view for me personally, I didn't really love. So that does take away from my enjoyment of it a little bit, but ultimately still a really great book. And I have since moved on to Brotherless Night by V.V. Ganeshanathan. Okay, this is the picture of the cover that the Women's Prize for Fiction uses. I saw this cover and I thought, oh my goodness, that looks incredible. I want to read it so bad. This is the cover I got from the library. I had no desire to pick this book up anymore. Like, I did not realize how influential the cover of a book could be. I think this is the most boring cover ever. There is nothing that draws me to it. I have no desire to read it if I saw it like this versus this cover. Like, it is crazy how different they are, and I think that just goes to show the power of what a cover can do to your book. Either way, I have picked it up. I am 50 pages in, and we are following, oh, what's her name? Sashi. We're following Sashi as she is trying to get herself into medical school. That's kind of where I'm at. You can definitely see a lot of political unrest in her life. Her brothers are not, they don't seem to be involved, but I think that they do become involved. There's a lot of police brutality against Tamils in Sri Lanka, I believe they're in Jaffna. And there's a lot of police brutality against the Tamil people. And I believe that that's kind of what the story is going to be based on. So I am looking forward to reading this book, I think, but this cover, it's not a good cover. To the American publishers, this is brutal. Anyways, that is where I'm at. I'm going to read this. I have 2 more of the books here. I have 1 more on the way, I think. Either way, I think I might split this up into a 2-part video because it's getting to be a little long. So I think I'm gonna read this, finish it up, end the reading vlog, and then start a new Women's Prize for Fiction reading vlog, because otherwise this thing is gonna be a monstrosity, and I don't want to edit that. So I hope your reading prize for fiction has been going well. I haven't been watching a lot of people's videos on them because I haven't wanted to know about the books going into them. So I'm gonna have to go back and start watching people's videos on their Women's Prize readings. But let us have a coffee, read a little bit more, and hopefully finish this up in the next couple days so that I can say I am partway through this long list. I think this will be book 4, 5? How many books have I read? I don't know how many books I've read, but either way, I am so far having an okay time. It's gone up. There's a plane very low. I've never seen a plane that close to us before. I'm having a good time. It's going up. It didn't start out the strongest, but 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster, and I do have high hopes for this, even though the cover's terrible. This book is incredibly well written. It's basically a history lesson on what goes on between the Tamil Tigers and the political unrest in the Sri Lankan government, and then India coming in. It is heartbreaking, and there is one little quote. So you're following one woman through the whole thing who's going through to become a doctor, and she begins to work in kind of the hospital set up by the Tamils, but she also works and she goes to school through the main university, so she's kind of living a little bit of a double life, trying to keep things separate and not letting people know what she's doing. And she has a lot of thoughts about what kind of the rebel group is doing versus what the government is doing. It is not a straightforward like black and white. There's very much a gray area. And there's a quote in here, and it's so good. "It's good you are leaving," she said. "We should all leave, but oh God, we belong in this place. How can we live anywhere else?" So here's the thing about the women's list. This book, 8 Lives of a Central Trickster, and Then She Fell. It's so much about sovereignty and self-determination and belonging and repression, and they are really, really brilliantly done books. They are so heavy. It's one thing I'm noticing about this list is there's not a lot of levity. Because of how I read these books and because I am dependent on the library, I am just reading them in the order that I get them. If I could get the 16 books all at once, I would definitely want to try to break some of these books up because they're intense. Like, there is a lot that goes on in these books, and the thing is, you read this, and I don't know a lot of Sri Lankan history. I don't know a lot of Palestinian Israel history. I don't know a lot of Korean Japan history. I don't know these things, and so you're learning them as you read them, and you think about these. People are living these things, and it is heartbreaking. And Then She Fell, which is about the fallout or the residential schools and how the Indigenous population is being treated by the Canadian government. You can't get away from it. It is so heavy and it is so prevalent, and it's just being put in your face in this list, in this long list, and I really appreciate it, but it is a lot, and I think that's why I'm definitely going to break this up into 2 parts. I need to take a bit of a break because my head is just reeling from these books. And like I said, this, and Then She Fell, 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster, Hangman even, like, they're really well written books. I haven't loved all of them, but there's just a lot, and I wonder if anybody else is feeling that way when it comes to this list. So I finished this. I am very glad to have read it. I think that the UK cover that I said previously is much more engaging, is maybe also a little misleading in what it is. It kind of reminds me a little of the cover for Lessons in Chemistry, in that it's a little bit more vibrant, and I think doesn't exactly align with the mood of the book. However, this just is not eye-catching, and I think almost because of this, you're gonna miss out on some readership, which is unfortunate, but hopefully the Women's Prize still just brings a lot of recognition to this book. I really enjoyed this. I thought maybe at one point that it was gonna slow down, but then the pacing picked up, and it has a bit of a twist at the end that I didn't see. Not like a thriller twist or anything, obviously, but something happens at the end that I really didn't see coming, and I think was done very, very well. So really, really glad to have read this book. On the next, so what I have coming up still is River East, River West. I have Night Bloom. I have Enter Ghost, which I think is going to be another really hard-hitting book. I have Ordinary Human Failings, and in The Shock of All Shocks, I actually was able to get In Defense of the Act, but that I am on hold for. It's going to take a little bit. I'm actually not sure I will be able to include it in a vlog because I don't know when I'm going to be able to actually get it, but I was actually able to, one of the Seattle library actually ended up ordering an e-copy, so I am on hold for that. So that is the Women's Prize so far. I've read Western Lane, I read While I DNF'd 2, and then I read Hangman, and then She Fell, Brotherless Night, and 8 Lives of a Central. So I've read 7. I've got 5 more coming, and then there are 4 that are unavailable to me. So I think I'm gonna get through quite a bit of this long list. It's been good. Please tell me how your reading experience has been. Are any of these other books slightly lighter? Like, they don't need to be humorous, but do they have a bit of a different tone? Because my goodness, these first ones have been a lot, and I'm very appreciative of them, but holy pants. Whew, guys, what books can do, hey? It's wild. So that is it for this part 1 of this reading vlog. If you're still here, leave a little pile of books down in the comment section, or let me know which of the books on the Women's Prize list has been your favorite so far. No spoilers, because like I said, I'm not through them all yet. Or what your overall thoughts are on the list. I'd absolutely love to know. And I will see you